Those of you familiar, I'm not Bob, who normally gives the ham morsels, but I did plagiarize and use his slide material, so there's going to be some familiarity. And the gist of this has tended to be, how can I have more fun in ham radio? Well, we're going to continue that. And the question now is, should I participate in the solar eclipse QSO party? So this is directed at generals and extras, even advances. If they were here, we could. No lonely advances. But I want you new technicians that are here. This is a good reason why you should be thinking about continuing the studies and upgrading to a general class that will get you into HF. So what is the SEQP, the Solar Eclipse QSO Party? An operating event sponsored by HamSci. This is a citizen science group that is focused on ham radio activities. It takes place on the day of the eclipse, before, during, and after, on 8th of April, 1400 to 2400 UTC. So that range is to give some time prior to, during the eclipse, and post-eclipse over the continental US. Why should we do this? Have fun contacting as many hams as possible during that period of time. Gain experience in operating in a contest. Now, this isn't like field day. It's not like sweepstakes, like a lot of the other ones where they're pretty intense contests. This one's a little bit more laid back. And in fact, you can operate without it actually having a contest-like environment. But what's really cool about it is you're assisting with the solar research that is providing important data on both solar science and propagation in particular, as the ionosphere is critical to our long-range communications, and how it behaves during the solar eclipse gives them insight into what's happening when the sun is doing different sorts of things, different amounts of solar energy hitting the ionosphere and creating the ionosphere, in fact. So how does this work? Operate on the HF bands 160 through and into the VHF at 6 meters, using the mode CW, single sideband, and virtually any digital mode that exists. For the digital modes, need to upload your reports with PSK Reporter. Now this happens even if it's not a contest. PSK Reporter can give indication of what sort of contacts are happening around the world in near real time. But that day, and that's happening whether there's a contest or not. But the idea is they want to get as many people during this period operating as possible. Log your contacts during the event, submit a Cabrillo file. N1MM plus is recommended, but all modern logging programs can output data in that format. And then literally, this is all that a report would have. The time, the mode, you see CW, phone, RTTY, and PSK, a digital mode that are listed. The grid locator where the contacts are made. You know where your originating one is in there, the signal report. And again, the signal report is important because signal reports are going to be changing based on ionospheric activity, and that's going to be studied by them. This is kind of interesting. So QSO points, you get 2 points for digital modes, and CW actually is a digital mode. And the reason that you get more points for that is that the data is better, because this is stuff that can either be skimmed automatically. So not just relying on a ham typing a report in, this is something that software is actually uploading. So the data is actually better for the scientists. And then 1 point for single sideband QSOs. You get a multiplier for grid squares. So talking to people all over the place is an advantage. And you get bonus points for operating during the eclipse, operating outdoors, public venue, uploading photos, system info, providing some additional information to the researchers. So what happens next? This is kind of interesting. Claim scores are not required to be accurate. You can kind of tell that maybe this isn't quite as prestigious contesting event, but that's not really the idea. You get a certificate probably for just submitting a score, but the real value is to the scientists who are evaluating this data. So referring back to why, the HAMSci data team will be using the data from the skimmers and PSK reporters and the logs to look at the information. And then the goal, as I mentioned, better understand relationship between the sun and the ionosphere and how it affects propagation. And the best way to do that, they can do all of the mathematics and applying physical principles to try to figure it out. But here's reality. Can I make a contact? What happens to those contacts? And I pulled a picture of what's actually taking place. This was in the solar eclipse on the 21st of August, 2017. And the path was from the northwest to the southeast part of the US. You can kind of see that diagonal. This one is starting in Texas and then running to the northeast. So the path is significantly different. And the shaded areas are obscuration. I don't know that word as far as the color coding, but you can see, whoops. No, what I'm trying to, there we go. Got rid of the, no, you can see on that bottom graph is the density of the contacts that are taking place diminished significantly during the time period of the eclipse. Well, if the sun is blocked and is not activating the ionosphere, all of a sudden those signals that were being refracted or reflected back to ground passed right through it. And that's where they're getting the scientific information. So what do you need to do? Go to www.hamsci.org. SEQP-rules. Rex in the newsletter, so signing up on the sheet that went around with your email, you'll be getting a newsletter. And Rex does a great job of just listing events that are taking place. And he's identified that this is taking place in the newsletter and a link to get to this site. So you don't need to write this down. So let's get operating.